What should people avoid while traveling to Europe?
Don't rent a car if you're going to stay at a major capital. It's not worth it. It's much better to use public transport and get an occasional Uber.
At the same time, I'd say not to be afraid to rent a car if the bulk of your trip is in more rural areas. European cities are awesome, but there are plenty of amazing experiences to be had in less populated areas that are hard to reach via public transit.
One thing to remember is you will pay a fee if you drive from one country to another and don't drive back to return the car. For example, if you rent a car in Frankfurt, drive down through Switzerland and into Italy, you'll pay a hefty fee to return the car to Hertz or whatever in Italy. Best to drive around in the same country with a rental, then take the train between countries. At least that has been my experience.
Yeah, fully agree. Rentals are great to get away from the tourist mobs, but keep in mind the distances are way different in Europe. If you just want to hit capital cities, don't bother. If you really want to experience one country, drive to some lesser-known spots. My girlfriend and I spent 2 weeks driving around Estonia and Latvia last summer, and it was freaking amazing. I did archery on an island off the coast of Estonia, and the guide was fucking stoked to see a Canadian. He couldn't believe it. We drove to a lake that borders Russia and got a bit scared from the locals, but nothing happened. It was just us being silly.
In major cities, don't let anyone hand you anything, such as flowers or whatever. Once it is in your hands, they start asking for money. They even gave a flower to one of my kids and then wouldn't take it back. Just set it on the ground and walk away.
In Florence, this guy was telling me he wanted to sell me a bracelet, and I told him I didn't have in cash. He said it's fine, it's free. So he put it on my wrist, and I started to walk away. He asked me for money, and I told him that I didn't have any money. He asked for it back, so I gave it back.
Jamaica. He walks up with a big smile and an outstretched hand to shake. Hi, remember me? I'm your waiter from the hotel. Nice to see you again. Having a good time? Great. Look, I need a small favor. I lost my wallet. Can you lend me $10 just for now? I'll pay it back tonight at the hotel. What time you coming down for dinner? I'll look for you.
My favorite thing about Jamaica is nobody ever has change, and the taxi costs double on the return trip.
I was in Naples once, and we were eating at a restaurant that the table was sort of on the sidewalk. Some dude kept trying to get me to buy some jewelry, and I kept telling him I didn't have any money and didn't want anything anyways. He gave me this cool carved elephant and said he wanted me to keep it, and then just walked away. It's still on my desk, 10 years later.
I actually had the opposite of that in Rome. I was there back when I was 17 with a girl I had a huge crush on. We were chilling at Piazza del Popolo when a roughly 60-year-old dude comes up to us with a bunch of roses and gives one to me and says it's for her. I actually went for my wallet and pulled out some money to give him, but he refused to take it. He just kept pushing my hand away, saying, no, per amore, and walked away. One of the nicest experiences I've ever had while traveling.
My wife and I were in Paris, walking around some touristy areas in the evening after dinner. A guy comes up to us with a single rose, and I wave him off, indicating I was not interested. He pantomimed that he would give me the rose for a cigarette, fair trade, and my wife got a rose.
Had a girl in Athens hand me a flower. I told her right away I have no cash on me. I travel for work, I don't carry any cash. If I can't pay contactless, I go somewhere else. She stuck another one behind my ear and said it's a free gift because there is a festival today. Okay, cool. She then started to gesturing a pregnant belly and asked for a little something for her baby. I told her again, as much as I would love to help her, I don't carry any cash. Her really sweet demeanor changed to a cold bitch face. She took both flowers back and went away without another word. Pretty funny, to be honest.
Isn't it funny how offended scammers get by not being able to be a horrible person for once?
I've always been amazed at that by scammers and muggers. They harass or attack you, but if you don't have what they want, they act like you were the asshole and wasting their time, as if you owed it to them to have $200 on you.
Falling in canals and walking on bicycle paths if they come to the Netherlands.
What country should I go to if I want to fall into canals?
Bristol in the UK. The pusher is always watching.
Freiburg, Germany. They have tiny canals that you can step over called Bachle, and children play with little boats in them. There's a local legend that if you're visiting and you fall in one, you're destined to marry a woman from the city. So if you want to fall into a canal and marry a German woman, I guess go there.
Another thing which primarily applies for Geithorn, but also any place in general, stay out of people's yards. For those who don't know, Geithorn is a small village where instead of streets, there are canals. It is quite the tourist attraction where they can rent boats to travel through the canals. However, some people fail to comprehend that it's still an actual village, and people live in the houses. It has occurred on multiple instances that tourists walked into the gardens of residents to take pictures.
I remember reading an article about how someone who lived in Geithorn was just sitting on the couch and watching TV, and all of a sudden there was an entire Chinese family in their living room taking photographs because they thought it was all a part of the act. Somewhat hilarious, and it's lovely there, but I'd never want to live there due to all the tourism.
I went to a famous US university, and there were lots of tour groups from Asia, and one time they came into the laundry room of my dorm when I was doing laundry. In no way was this a scenic spot. It was a basement room.
Should be obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Don't do the Hitler salute while in Germany. Not even as a joke. It's illegal. And Holocaust denial is illegal in 18 European countries.
Fun story. My mother is an English teacher at a Dutch school. Her students went on an extended school trip to Germany and Poland to learn about World War II. At the German border, one of the students thought it'd be hilarious to do a Hitler salute. The whole bus had to turn back. No one was allowed into Germany.
Even more fun story. I went to Auschwitz, and a couple on my tour kept taking smiling selfies, which, odd, but okay. Then we went in the room with the mountains of eyeglasses, and she said, "This is only place you can't take photos." And the couple took more smiling selfies. Then, we went into the crematorium, and we all had little speakers. And the tour guide had this mic, and she was so far away. But I overheard the dude say to his wife, "This is truly Hitler's greatest triumph." And before I could turn around, this tiny little Jewish-Polish guide had his arm twisted, yelled something in Polish into a walkie-talkie, and two dudes turned up and escorted him out. His wife did the Sieg Heil and spit at her, and then one of the guards grabbed her. The little Polish lady then politely explained this happens a lot, and that what he said, most the group still had no idea what he'd said, but they all saw the lady Sieg Heil, was illegal and he would be charged to the fullest extent. Absolutely wild. Also, randomly, because of bad planning and my friend leaving the next day and us having planned to do this together, it was my birthday, and we went immediately from there to the bar to meet my friends, which turned out to be a surprise birthday party. It was my weirdest birthday.
On a related note, not illegal, but don't come to Berlin and dance on the stones of the Holocaust Memorial. Also, not a great backdrop for your duck face or smiley Tinder picture.
Be careful with photography around there in general, as it's also directly behind several embassies, including that of the United States. I studied abroad with a guy who loved to take out a drone and get aerial photos of anything he could. Usually he'd get a go-ahead from the nearest policeman, but that day he either couldn't find one, didn't think to ask, or didn't like the answer, and did it anyway. Police were on the scene in minutes, and they took him and his drone away for quite a while to search it, either for photographs he shouldn't have had or for explosives, I'm not sure. As well as being disrespectful and irreverent, it was just an incredibly careless thing to do.
Restaurants in touristy areas that have signs out front with pictures of the meals and the price featured prominently.
If the menu is translated to several languages that aren't spoken in the country, then the restaurant is for tourists.
To clarify, menus that also show an English translation aren't an automatic disqualifier. Sometimes you have restaurants that are good and just have a savvy owner who wants to be accessible to foreigners. But if a menu has 4 to 5 languages, then they're probably leaning in real hard on the tourist dollar and should be avoided.
Also, sometimes you're just in a touristy area, so all the restaurants are going to cater to tourists to some extent. Many tourist places are a very poor value, but not every restaurant that caters to tourists is automatically bad. If you're in a big city, definitely avoid the tourist traps. But if you're in a small ski town, you could be severely limiting your dining choices by ruling out anywhere has translated menus.
If you do go to those cafes near touristy areas, here's a pro tip. Take a picture of the menu when you order so you can check the prices later. And before you sit down, ask if they accept cards. If they say the card reader doesn't work, ask to see it or go find it yourself on their counter. Next, they'll tell you the Wi-Fi cell doesn't work, but on the reader, you can see the signal. Then, before you pay, check the costs against what you saw on the menu. They may be trying to push you to use the nearby ATM that has a skimmer on it. Another scam is when you order chips or fries, they'll bring you the large instead of the small that was priced. Make sure you get what you ordered and send back everything else. And water isn't free.
If you're from the US, don't sign up for the bullshit $10 per day international service with Verizon or other service providers. Nearly any airport you arrive in will have a place where you can buy a SIM card to put in your phone at a fraction of the price. For instance, I once got a SIM card in Seville, Spain for something like €12, and it came with a month of service and 9 gigabytes of data. Edit, for using wrong name. Edit 2. Apparently there are eSIM services you can get now that are even easier. I'm not familiar with them, but probably worth looking into.
Your locked American phone may not work with an airport SIM card. This is one of the reasons I always buy my own unlocked phone rather than buying or leasing one from my service provider.
I was just starting to forget that locking phones to providers was a thing. In recent years, it became illegal in Europe.
Avoid speaking without exchanging greetings first, in France at least, and not responding in kind when someone greets you. In other words, exchange bonjour before you ask where the toilet is. Avoid letting your kids act like monsters in public, in restaurants, in particular. Avoid rushing through meals, unless your kids are acting like monsters.
In Paris, get to lunch, dinner before you're hungry, as it can take a while for the food to come. They're also not quick to come with the check. Ask for city water.
Also, if you ask for tap city water and they try to charge you and act innocent about it, remind them that they are required under EU law to provide water for free. They will remove it from your bill quickly. This didn't happen to me in France, but anywhere with tourists and a language barrier, they may try to charge you for random shit that should be free.
Do not put your bag, purse, or backpack on the back of your chair when you sit down to eat, especially outside. Thieves look for this in groups of 3 or 4. One of them will come from one side of you as a snatcher, and the rest will stand in a group very close to you, talking or smoking, etc., pretending that they don't know the snatcher. Then the one guy will snatch your item and run right through the group. In case someone is quick enough to chase, they will accidentally be in your way. Happened in Rome, but locals recognized it and broke it up.
I'd avoid social media and watching TV in the month before your trip, and spend that time on Duolingo instead. Not sure where exactly you're going in Europe, but it'll help you to know a couple of phrases in the language.
This is one of the most useful tips. Learn at least a few words in the local language, and the people's attitude towards us changes swiftly.
It really depends on which part of Europe you are talking about. For example, Finland and Italy are very different places with different social cultures. Heck, there are differences even inside a country. Some tips in Finland, capital area especially. Never sit right next to a stranger unless the bus is super cramped or something. Otherwise, you'll be regarded as a creep. Also, don't walk or stand too close to people if there is space. Finnish bus stops are actually a bit funny with how people spread horizontally as far away as possible while still being at the proximity of the bus stop. Don't speak loudly in public spaces, only if you really have to. Otherwise, again, you're a creep. This is more a city thing. Don't interrupt other people, unless, again, you have to, or the other person is really rambling on and you have limited time to speak. This is actually a significant difference between Finns and aforementioned Italians. Interrupting, or more like elbowing, in conversations in Italy is normal traffic rule and implies active engagement and listening, assuming that both parties are elbowing, while interrupting in Finland implies that you aren't valuing what the other person is telling. Source: I'm a Finn that worked a bit with Italians. I kind of needed to learn new traffic rules with them. It went fine after that. Don't take schedules lightly. A Finn says 2 p.m., they mean 2 p.m. sharp.